It is true that reason and experience are recognized as valid methods of knowledge, but the underlying metaphysical assumptions in Vedic philosophy are quite different. The first difference is that the world is idea-like rather than object-like. So the problem of Platonism in Western philosophy does not arise because we don't have to look to a transcendent world in order to obtain new ideas. We can in fact look at the present world and we can derive ideas from the observation of this world. This is also the reason why the empirical method appears to work in generating new ideas. These ideas are not being generalized as free creativity of the mind. Rather, they are perceptions of the mind by which the mind is able to see ideas within this world. To understand the solution, however, we have to recognize that the mind is also a sense. It is called the sixth sense in Vedic philosophy. By the five senses, we perceive the sensations such as taste, touch, smell, sound, and sight. And by the mind, we perceive ideas such as table, chair, house, computer, human, car, etc. So there are two types of empiricism in Vedic philosophy, the first of the senses and the second of the mind. These are involved in the perception of two different kinds of entities that combine to create experience. Therefore, when we say that we are generalizing the individual things into concepts, it is not necessary to simply come up with an idea freely. We can also generalize through the mind. For example, when we call some things as dogs and others as cats, we are not generalizing. We are actually seeing by the mind, and we are seeing the common or shared form between different individual members of the cat or the dog family. So the notion that the ideas exist in this world and we are able to perceive the ideas by the mind resolves the problem of generalization in empiricism and the problem of Platonic world in rationalism. Now the issue is that we have to develop the mind to correctly perceive the similarities of form. Therefore, doing science or acquiring knowledge becomes a process of how we develop the mental faculty of perception. The second difference in Vedic philosophy is that space and time of this world is like an inverted tree rather than like a box. Remember that by the senses we can see individual things, but by the mind we are seeing commonalities between things. If there is objective commonality, then how the same thing appears in many individual things needs to be explained. For example, how does the idea of color appear in many types of colors such as red, blue, and green? The answer to this problem is that the color is like a branch of a tree from which many individual twigs such as red, blue, and green are manifest. So the idea that is shared across more ideas has a higher position on this inverted tree. Just like the trunk of the tree is common across many branches, but the branch is common across fewer leaves. So we organize the ideas in a tree-like structure such that the more general idea is higher up in the tree. By this approach, we come to the conclusion that all ideas are not universal. Rather, some ideas are more universal, while other ideas are more local. Therefore, we can see many more types of animals, a fewer number of mammals, and an even fewer number of dogs, and an even fewer number of poodles. But when we see a poodle, then it is also a dog, a mammal, and an animal. Therefore, sense perception is just seeing the individual thing, while the mental perception is seeing the entire hierarchy of ideas. With this revision, we solve the problem of contextuality in rationalism, because all ideas are not necessarily universal. Some ideas are less universal than others, so the idea can be true in many contexts, but the idea doesn't have to be true universally. We could not solve this problem in Platonism because all ideas are universals, and they were equally universal. But with the tree structure existing within this world, we not only see the ideas within this world, but these ideas are also contextual. The third main difference is that what we call the body or object in modern science is defined as a role, and this role creates the individual thing from the general idea. The individual thing is therefore not a material substance, Rather, this individual is the consciousness of the soul. And this consciousness combines with the idea, so this combination of the individual and the general creates the object. The object has general properties like color, taste, smell, form, size, etc. And yet, that general thing is instantiated as a particular because each particular thing is produced by the combination of the individual soul and the general concept. The consciousness of the soul is called Sat, and the general concept is called Chit. And the combination of the Sat and Chit constitutes the combination of the individual and general. So there is one universal reality which exists as the tree of concepts, which is called the Chit. And there are infinite individual realities of the soul which roam on this tree of concepts and combine with different parts of this tree, creating different objects with different concepts. So this is the solution to the problem of choice in rationalism, where we can choose different axioms and come up with different conclusions. The solution is that, yes, we can roam on this universal tree and see only different parts of the tree, but that doesn't deny the existence of the universal tree. To know the absolute truth, we have to look towards the unified root rather than to the diverse branches. If we consider a branch to be the root of the tree, then there are infinite axioms. But we can reduce the number of axioms by moving our consciousness upward until we come to a single axiom, which is the root. So we have the choice of neglecting the root and seeing only the branches. But that choice doesn't deny the root from which all the branches emanate. In fact, the root explains the existence of my choice, or the very reason that I am able to make a choice that differs from the choices of other individuals. The fourth main reason or difference is that with this tree-like structure, we can provide a very clear definition of scientific progress. The progress is rising from the leaves to the branches to the trunks to the root. The sense of progress can be explained in many ways. First, rising up this tree constitutes the application of Occam's razor, by which we reduce the number of assumptions, and the knowledge becomes more and more unified. Second, this method also explains why at one time we thought that the world is like particles, and then we thought it's like waves, and then we realized that we need to arrive at something that is both particle and wave, and yet it is none of them. This new entity that is both particle and wave, and yet neither of them, is like the trunk from which the two branches, i.e. particle and wave, emerge. Our knowledge is progressing because we are attaining greater unity. Third, if we encounter a new phenomena that our current theory is unable to explain, then it is like a new branch emerging from a different trunk, and we have to first understand the branch and trunk. But the result will be two contradictory theories for two separate branches. The unity is attained only by the root. So by defining the structure of knowledge as a tree, we are able to provide a definition of progress. This doesn't mean that we know the perfect thing right away, but we can say that if we follow the origin of the tree, then perfect knowledge will certainly be attained one day. The effort spent in earning this knowledge is not a wasteful exercise. Rather, we have a continuous sense of progressive advancement. So in this way, by changing the metaphysical assumptions about the world, we solve all the problems of epistemology which have existed in both rationalism and empiricism. You can say, why should I believe in this metaphysics? What evidence exists for claiming that it is true? And the short answer is that it is a valid solution to all the problems of epistemology. So even though you cannot empirically see everything, the very fact that it solves all the problems can be used to infer that it is the best approach. The claim is that you cannot find a problem that this metaphysics does not solve. Therefore, you can go on investigating if there are problems in the solution. If you find a problem, then we can reject this metaphysics. But if you don't find a problem, then the metaphysics will stand unchallenged. So you're right that experience and reason are also considered valid methods of knowledge in Vedic philosophy, but the reasons for this claim are totally different. These are not the reasons based on the metaphysics of Western philosophy, where we already noted many problems. They are rather based on a completely different metaphysics where all the problems are solved. So the rationalism and empiricism of Vedic philosophy still involves the mind and the senses and a real external world with the observer in it. But all these things are redefined in the process of coming up with a justification for reason and experience. In fact, now we don't even have to pit reason against experience or vice versa. By reason, we traverse the universal conceptual tree by the mind, and by experience, we traverse this tree by our senses. When we traverse the tree by the senses, we also have the mind present, so sensual travel is more complete than the mental traversal. However, the mental traversal of the tree is possible within the current body simply by developing our mental faculties. It would be much harder to travel all over the universe by the body rather than traveling the universe by the mind. Therefore, even though the sensual experience is more complete, the mental experience is more practical. Therefore, the process of cultivating knowledge by traveling the tree mentally is called Jnana Yoga, or the method by which we can see the unity in the diversity through the mind.